Welcome back, book fans. Well, I know I haven't posted a video for quite a while because I said I was going to be learning Russian, and I have been learning Russian. I'm reading the next Tim book in the series, but this video is not about the next Tim book. This video is about my new chair, which is so comfortable. Oh. No, it's not. It's about Francois LeLord's book, the second one in the series, Hector and the Secrets of Love. Let's get straight into it, shall we? Second book in the series. Really enjoyed the first. I think on my channel there's another review of the first somewhere, unless that was before my channel got moved to another link, but I think there is. I'm going to try and link it in the box below. And I really enjoyed the first book. It was great, and they made it into a movie, and as usual the movie's pretty different from the book, and people go, I've seen that, the movie version, but we, or at least some of us, know that movies are a different art form than books, and therefore different method of storytelling. And I found the book really enjoyable. Hector and the Search for Happiness, great one, and I highly recommend it. The second one, as with all series, like for example The Matrix or the old Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire, who was the best Spider-Man, the second one is not as original. Obviously we've seen it before, we know who the character is. We want to see the character again because we enjoyed it the first time, but we also want to see something more. But we don't really know what we want to see, do we? We just, or read, we just go, oh, I like that, I'd like it again, but different. So Hector and the Secrets of Love was Hector but different, and I can say I enjoyed the read. I don't remember it being as good as Hector and the Search for Happiness, but again, that's because when I read Hector and the Search for Happiness it was entirely new, and when I read this one, as I'm repeating myself now, it wasn't new, but it was still good and I still enjoyed it. Why? I love the style of the writing. I remember reading the first one and being like, oh, this is kind of written in a kid's style. It's not like written as though the narrator was speaking to grown-up, mature adults. There's no technical details. It assumes that the reader is like a child, which is nice for a psychology book because all of the ideas are broken down really simply and they're pretty easy to understand. And Hector and the Search and the Secrets of Love, I did feel as though it was still written to a child, but I feel like that writing style had changed a little bit. It was like certain words in there, like conscientious, and other words which were a bit from a more advanced vocabulary. And it did make me think, oh, even though this does have that feel of the narrator is writing it as though it were a children's story, the vocabulary there was actually at advanced level English. So, but still, it did maintain that feeling of being written to a child. But it added in some complex words. So whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know. I suppose that it would have been just as good had those words not been in the book, and I wouldn't have noticed if they were missing or were simplified. But that is my take. I felt that the second book in the series was written maybe to an older kid than the first book in the series. I don't feel like it maintained that same level. But again, saying that, if you want to learn some new words while you're reading a story, there were... Shame I just don't make notes when I'm reading, I just plough through it, but there was a good selection of vocabulary in there. The second point I wanted to make, actually, I'm reading the third Hector book at the moment. It's Hector and the Search for Lost Time. I'm going to say the second book in the series, that's this one, what I is talking about now. The plot is the most contrived, I would say. It's a search for the professor who is lost. We go here, we go there, we go there, we go there, we go looking for the professor, and then there's all these different characters that come up within that. Some are like red herrings, some turn out to be different characters later on, so there's like some twists of, oh, that character is actually this character now, by the way. And so it feels like I'm reading some detective novel, like who is it? Philip Marlowe novel or James Bond novel. It's like is it Poirot, Agatha Christie novel. Although we are reading a Hector book, I can see that there's an influence of Francois LeLord, an influence on Francois LeLord of detective novels, because that it felt to an extent that Hector was chasing down someone he needed to find in order for another big company manager who acted as the antagonist throughout the book. So it did dip into detective territory. I mean, I'm not saying there were any guns and weapons there. Well, there actually were, on second thoughts. But Hector didn't use them. It was the other characters, there were guns in it. So, it's not a detective story, obviously. It is a Hector story, but I did feel like it did dipped in there. And the first one does too, because the first Hector book, he gets trapped by a gang of mobsters a while ago, since I read it now, and then he gets locked in a cell underneath the ground. And I did remember thinking at the time of reading Hector and the Search for Happiness, wow, this is a great book, but this bit here feels a bit too much, a bit contrived, just in order to get that plot flowing. Which, to be fair, I'm not a great writer myself, although I am trying to be. And I can understand why he put that in. And it is fiction. It is fiction. But Hector, to me, feels so real at the beginning of the book, as if it were something that would happen in real life, and I'm like hooked, and it feels like the world is in our world. And then when these certain things happen, like Hector goes and gets trapped in the underground cell by the mobsters, it does feel like, oh, okay, now we have definitely entered a fictional world, so there is a crossover there, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because the books are still great. I would recommend them, but it does feel to wobble between what could be real and what is definitely fiction. And the second book, I would say, is almost entirely fiction. It feels fiction the whole way through. Maybe at the beginning I felt like Hector and me were sharing the same world, but then quite quickly I realised that Hector was in a fictional world and the book felt like fiction. Now I'm reading the third, and it feels a little bit less... It still is fictional, but it feels a bit less fictional. The plot does not feel so detective-like in its weaving and snaking and twists and the direction that the plot takes and the exaggerations that happen within the plot. I think, for me, the second book felt the most fictional, the most exaggerated. So that's the end of that point. Third point, what I learned. I was talking to this book with my friend, and he said, what did Hector learn? And I straight away jumped in and started speaking about what I learned while reading the book. And then he said, I didn't ask you what you learned, I asked you what Hector learned. Which is interesting, because I felt like I didn't learn anything about love from reading Hector. But I am 30 years old, and I've had my fair share of relationships which are now in the past. So I have my own lessons and my own experiences on this thing we call, why am I doing that? This thing we call love. I have my own conclusions about it, and I didn't feel like Hector's and the Secrets of Love, I didn't feel like it was anything new, fresh for me. I didn't feel like I absorbed anything from that. I really didn't have any epiphanies or go, oh wow, I've never looked at love that way before. What I'm saying is I wasn't able to redefine my view of what I think love is through reading about Hector and Hector's experiences. Yes, they were laid out in a very nice way, which is something that I couldn't do because I'm not as planned probably as Francois LeLord, and actually the theories were just laid out nicely with the seedlings and a nice end where it wraps it up in a parcel where it says, oh, this is the point we're trying to make with this book. Here's the big parcel package that we want to give the reader, and that was nicely put into a box or several boxes at the end of the book. So it was beautifully laid out, formatted and planned, and that was nice, the way that it was packaged. But I still felt that actually I couldn't take any of those lessons and ideas and incorporate them into my perspective, because I felt like over the course of my life I had already considered all of those aspects of love. So for me it wasn't anything new. My brain didn't have to make great leaps to understand any of the things that Hector was experiencing in that. But what did Hector learn? He learned a lot, and he obviously came to his conclusions at the end of it. So even though I feel like I haven't really learned anything about love, I haven't really expanded my own bubble of vision through reading this book, I did enjoy reading Hector's experience, and I really enjoyed following Hector through his journey, and it was a pleasant read, and I recommend it. Yeah, it's a nice read. If you're younger than me, it probably would be a bit heavy. If you were maybe 18, 19, in your early 20s, it might be you might get more out of it. But if you're older and you want a nice book to read that is an adventure and it will keep you hooked, because it absolutely certainly kept me hooked, and I read it in 3 days. Yeah, and I couldn't put it down actually. I really enjoyed the adventure. So as far as it from an adventure book point of view, great, and I loved it, and I recommend it, and I hope you enjoy the read. So for me, I think Hector and his journey gets, say, not 5, that's generous, I would say a 3.6. A 3.6. It's enjoyable, and I recommend it. So that's the end of that. I am, as I say, reading Hector and the Search for Lost Time right now, so there'll be a review shortly about that. So it's almost 15 minutes. See you later. I've been Callum Tingham. Hope you enjoyed this video. Leave comments below. Recommend me some books to read, adventure ones hopefully, and if you have anything to say in Russian, привет, and увидимся.